Pornography is affecting millions of men, including Christians. Have you seen the effects of porn on your church? Perhaps you feel at a loss when facing the destructive force of pornography. Covenant Eyes is here to help. We created Strive, an anonymous 21-day porn detox for men. Strive will educate and equip men with powerful weapons for this battle. Contact our team today and see how Covenant Eyes and Strive can equip the men in your church to defeat pornography for good.
Mantour Ministries presents the Mantour Guy Podcast. We may talk about football. We could mention bacon. We might reference Rocky movies. We'll probably discuss the Mantour conferences, but we'll definitely talk about how to grow in our walk with God. Here's your host, the Mantour Guy, Jamie Holden.
Welcome back to the Mantour Guy Podcast. Jamie Holden here. I'm so glad to be back with you again this week as we kick off fall together. It's fall, and I'm a guy who absolutely loves summer, so it's always a bittersweet moment for me when summer comes to an end. But fall has a lot of great stuff too, so we march forward into this cooler weather together. It's been awesome having football back. The first week, my Broncos finally won a game in September for the first time in 3 seasons. It was great seeing people back in the stands cheering for their favorite team. Football is back. Fall also means many churches are relaunching their men's ministry after taking a break for the summer. I love seeing men's ministries grow and thrive, so it's always exciting to see all the groups functioning like they should as men grow in their walk with God. And we have a number of men's groups working through our various books and resources, so that's exciting also. Fall also means it's time for the PennDel Potomac Men's Conference coming up soon. This year's conference will take place on October 15th to 16th, 2021 at Trinity Life Church in Lutherville, Maryland. And today I'm happy to be joined by the PennDel Men's Ministry Director, Tom Rees, who is the co-host of this conference. Tom's been on our podcast in the past. He always is a great guest. He's a great friend of mine. He's a true mentor. It's always great having him with us. And Tom is going to share about the theme and what you can expect from this year's conference. So Tom, welcome back to the Mantour Guy Podcast.
Hey, Jamie, great to be with you and great to be with the men that are on this podcast. I hope everybody's doing really well. I hope your fantasy football teams are doing good. Jamie, I heard you had a killer week, over 200 points scored in both your leagues. So it's nice to be back in the throes of football season, isn't it?
I love it. I love football. I don't like fall that much because I'm a summer guy. My bones love the warm weather, but fall football helps me get through it. So
I love fall, and fall's a great time, and fall's time for the men's conference.
Yeah,
so we're pumped in October. We got our men's conference, the 360 man men's conference. And so I know one of the questions you asked earlier was, where the 360, what's that about? And let me just tell you that we're encouraging men to be 360 men. That means to lead and influence in all directions. And so think about, just where we have spheres of influence as men. And so we have them in our churches, we have them in our families, we have them in our workplaces, in our communities. And so we want to encourage men to lead at every angle in every different relationship they have. And the 360 Man Conference is geared towards that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. I was just talking to somebody yesterday about it. They're bringing men to a conference and they're excited about it. I'm pumped about it. It's my favorite week of the year. I get to go to a men's conference. I don't have to do anything. I just get to go and talk to the guys in the lobby and listen to his messages, and it's my favorite. So I know this year he says 360 Man, and then your subtitle is Be Audacious. If you've seen the poster, guys, there's like a B. It's kind of inverted. There was a lot of discussion about that B in the design, but explain to us about what that audacious means. I looked it up personally, but for those who don't have a dictionary in front of them, what does that mean, be audacious?
Yeah, so the B is inverted, and the reason why it was inverted is because we're talking about 360 man. So it's all different angles, and to be able to work with that. So that was one of the design elements. But the be audacious. So I was at a meeting back this would have been back at the beginning of the year. And we were, again, in the throes of the pandemic. And I was in a meeting. Mike Bongiorno was chairing the meeting. And I remember Mike at one point was talking about a specific situation. And he just said, we just really need to be audacious. We've been sitting back and we've been, I think in some ways, when I look as men and I look at the pandemic, we've been sitting back and we've been responding to all these things. Be audacious means to be bold, to take a risk, to take a step out. And that's a big piece of that. So to be audacious, we want men to be risk takers and to be godly risk takers, because guys take bad risks all the time. But what would it be if we were audacious for Christ? And so that's kind of the sub thing. And as I'm listening to Mike say that, I'm like, that's it. That's it. I turned around and said to Bobby Basham, I reached out to Bobby that week. I said, Bobby, what do you about the theme, be audacious? Now, it worked. So what did you end up doing? You ended up going to a dictionary and looking it up, right?
Yep, exactly what I did.
What does this mean? And when you look it up, it's really interesting because audacious can mean one of two things. I mean, it could be a good word, like, hey, we're taking bold risks and we're fearless. And it could also be the kind of word you go, oh man, I don't want to be audacious. We mean it in a godly sense, and where guys take a risk. I mean, you look at guys like Peter. I love Peter. You see Peter in the Bible. When you read the stories of Peter, Peter was a guy that was audacious. He would take risks. And so, as they're out of the boat and the storm comes, what does Peter do? Peter, gets out of the boat and follows Jesus. He walks on water and comes towards Jesus. And, again, Peter was a bold risk taker. Now, Peter, when you look at it, some of his things were not always the best, but a lot of times you saw Peter in the thick of it all. He was an audacious leader for Christ. So,
yeah, I love Peter.
And as a church planner, that's what Peter did. And planning churches, he traveled all around to get new churches started. So I'm really believing God to raise up men to be audacious for Christ and for their families in a positive way.
It's a great theme, especially coming out of this COVID. It's time we lose our defeated attitude and start getting a victor's attitude as Christian men again. Yeah. And taking our walk with God seriously, our interaction in church seriously, our men's group seriously. We need to be audacious about getting back together with men. So I really enjoy that theme. I think it's going to be a great conference. And I know you have a great lineup of speakers again this year. I'm really excited for the Friday night session. You have Reggie Dabbs is going to be sharing on Friday night. I remember he spoke back in 2015, and he had all the guys throughout his message there yelling, "Long live the King." I'll never forget that. That was just so powerful. I just can't wait to see what he has for us this year. What can men expect from Reggie on Friday night?
You never know what to expect from Reggie on Friday night. No, it's interesting because last year, because of COVID, we did pivot and we only did a Saturday session. And so this year, we're just like, you know what, we're going to go back. We're going to do a Friday and a Saturday. And for Friday night, Reggie, when he committed to do Friday night, we were thrilled for that because we like to bring in somebody who's going to kind of create some energy, break up some of the routine of things, and just to kind of go in and energize the guys on that first night. And Reggie is definitely that kind of a guy. Reggie travels all over the nation and speaks to schools, assemblies, to high school kids and gets them pumped up. In addition to that, Reggie's been a chaplain for a lot of sports teams. He's done he's spoken at all the NFL teams in terms of one point or another, done a devotional for them. And so he's just a tremendous leader. And I believe, when you look and you say, what are you looking for from Reggie? Reggie's going to talk about audacious hope. And let me just tell you right now, we need hope. As we look at that, how do we go to hope? And how do we grab hold of hope again? And I think Reggie has a message that does that. He speaks to students about that. But I think there's a lot of guys that need hope. Because what happens is we're navigating right now, we're navigating things politically, we're navigating the pandemic. People are navigating things in their families. This past week's been a hard week. I've had several families, some friends that have had just tremendous hits this week. And when I think about the hurt and the pain they're going through, and how do we deal with hope, and how do we walk through that? We were at a funeral on Saturday, and it was a 27-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And I just think, how do you navigate that kind of pain as a parent, as a friend? How do you deal with that? And let me just tell you, we need audacious hope. It's got to come from God. And I think the hope, one of the things within our faith tribe is we believe in the blessed hope, and that's the hope of heaven.
Yeah.
And so it's not only for here, but it's for heaven. And I think about that message of how does God bring hope into our lives? And how do we see that happen? So Reggie, he's gonna share, he's gonna speak about hope and what that means for you and I in our lives and for each man that comes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And guys, if you're thinking about just coming for Saturday, maybe you don't want to fight the traffic on Friday night or whatever, I encourage you, make the effort and go Friday night. Friday night is always one of the best sessions every year. I can just so many memories from Friday nights. I remember one year, you had Pastor Choco on a Friday night, and he was just so powerful. Men were at the altars for hours. And one year you had Fred Stoker on a Friday night. He was just powerful message for the men. And Friday night is worth the effort. Make the trip. Don't just do it Saturday. Make sure you're there Friday night. Cost isn't really that much more. It's definitely worth the effort. So make sure, guys, you come out for that Friday night session. It's going to be powerful this year. So, and then Saturday morning, you're going to kick off the first session with New York Times bestselling author, Pastor Mark Batterson. What are men can they anticipate with Mark on Saturday? I know we spoke back in 2014, and he was fabulous then. What can we look forward to this time?
Yeah, so Mark, I appreciate Mark and the messages that he brings in terms of challenging guys. We have Mark speaking about audacious habits. So how do we develop habits in our life that help move us towards godly living in our lives? 'Cause, see, I think some of the systems in our life are broke. You have people that kind of like, they've got good intentions, but if we don't develop the right habits, the right systems, we find ourselves repeating the wrong things over and over again. So how do we develop those kind of things? Mark's going to speak to that. Again, Mark, some of his books, one of his latest is The Power of a Whisper, just tremendous. Talking about that relationship we have with Christ and prayer and what that means. And when I look at over and over again, how do we help guys to develop the patterns in their life, the habits in their life that are going to be positive and help move them towards the goals they have? So one of the questions that I like to ask people when I coach them is, where do you want to be in 5 years? What do you want to see happen in your life? 5 years from now, what do you want that to look like? And people will come up with all kinds of things. Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. And da, 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 da. And that's good. But then you see that they never break out of where they're at and move towards their goals. Why? Because the habits in their life are not in place. So Mark's going to speak towards how do we develop healthy habits that bring us towards where we need to be, and not only healthy habits, but audacious habits. And how do we get those in gear to move us in the right direction? So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Mark only takes so many invitations, and so we're honored to have Mark come and speak to us at Trinity Life in Baltimore.
Yeah, he always does a great job. I love reading his books. I love hearing him speak. I'm really looking forward to that session as well. And then you have one more session before your lunch break, and that is with Christopher Yon. Did I say his last name right?
You did, yes.
Okay. Share with the men about Christopher and his ministry, because like I had never heard of him before. You told me he was going to be speaker, then I did some research on him. So share a little bit about what men can expect in his session.
Yeah, so Christopher wrote a book called Holy Sexuality. And he's going to talk about sexuality and talk about that. We are under bombardment in our culture today with so many different views on sexuality. There's all kinds of gender issues that we're navigating and walking through as a culture and as a community of faith. And so one of the things that Christopher is going to speak about is he's going to share his own story. And it's a powerful story. And I don't want to take away his thunder on that. But when I think about Christopher Yon, and as he shares his story, about how he went from a lifestyle that was ungodly to walking with Christ and the changes that he's made along the way. Christopher teaches at Moody Bible Institute as adjunct professor. He travels all over speaking, and we're thrilled to have him. In fact, he's going to be with us on Saturday, and Sunday he's staying over, and he'll be at Trinity Life and preaching there on Sunday morning as well. So powerful message of how Jesus can change your life and help you to walk with integrity in your sexual life. I think that when we look at today's day and age, men are everybody's bombarded, but men are bombarded in the area of sexuality. I spoke on this past Friday, spoke at Bethesda Mission and to a group of guys there, and a discipleship group. And as I was speaking to them, we were talking about addictions and walking through that. And what happens with addictions, because, in addictions, there's all types of things that people are living under and working through. And let me just share this one thing with you. And I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'd like to read this. Just somebody had sent this to me, and I thought it was a powerful way to express what people are dealing with. So this is a person dealing with drug addiction. He blows air into his little blue bag stamped Scumbag and thinks to himself how fitting the name is. Whenever someone looks at him, it's probably the first word that pops into their head, either that or junkie. They've been his labels for years, along with loser, thief, fiend, crackhead, garbage, vagrant, piece of fill in the blank, and worthless. These are the words he's heard used to describe him. And although he used to think he was so much more, nowadays, all he ever thinks is that he'll be those words, especially addict. And so I've got a person we've been praying for years who's an addict, and they're using a needle. And when we've talked with him, his goal is to be what's called a functional addict. He wants to be able to go to work, and he wants to be able to use a drug. So let me just tell you that the drug of choice among many Christian men is pornography. And so, and the shame that's associated with that, and it drives men into hiding, and it drives men into a pretty dark place. So on the outside, they look like everything's great and everything's functioning, but inside, there's something that's destructive to them. And so what I'm seeing right now is, as we navigate this theme of holy sexuality, how do we help men to get free in their lives? And how do we help men to not only make the commitment, but establish the habits that help them to walk in that freedom?
Yeah.
So that's because the enemy wants to trap guys in addiction and sin, and unfortunately he's got a hold of a lot of men in this area. So we're hoping that third session is really gonna help guys to break free in some life controlling issues in their life.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's such a powerful topic that men need help with so much, and looking forward to hearing what he shares with the men.
Yeah, let me just share this one thought too. If you've got a guy who's struggling with gender issues, let me encourage you to bring him. That session is going to be pretty powerful, and it's going to deal with that issue as well. And so I think it's important that we provide opportunities for men in the Christian context to hear what God says about sexuality and about gender roles.
Yeah, it is important, guys. So if you know anybody in that situation, make sure you bring them with you to the conference. And that session is going to be the session right before lunch. And then it's going to be lunchtime. And can the guys expect a delicious Chick-fil-A again this year?
We got Chick-fil-A again for the guys that are there. Now, we have a remote sites too. We have host sites in different churches. I'm not sure what they're going to serve at your remote. Like if your church is hosting this in their location, I'm not sure what they're going to serve. But at the Trinity Life site in Baltimore and Lutherville, actually right outside the city, we're going to have some really good Chick-fil-A.
There you go, guys. So there's another reason to go in person. You don't have to wait in a long drive-through to get your Chick-fil-A. It'll be handed to you outside in the lobby. And another reason to make sure you come and attend in person this year. I know the satellite church is great. I just think it'll be great to see that church packed with men. I hope men turn out in person. I'm really looking forward to it. And then you have your closing session is going to end with Mike Santiago. I never really knew that much about Mike, and I saw he was on your list of speakers. And then he spoke at General Council. I actually watched him there, and I'm like, oh man, that session is going to be really good on the last session on Saturday. So share a little bit about Mike and what men can expect from him.
So I was in Richmond, Virginia, and we were at a church planning launch training. And launch training is just it's an opportunity to train church planners. We've got one coming up the end of October. And so if anybody's interested in getting training for church planning, or you know somebody you think would fit, I've got some scholarships available for that. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and we can talk more about what that could look like for you. But Mike actually is one of the trainers for church planning. And as I'm sitting there, Bobby and I had been going back and forth as to who that last speaker is, because it's kind of like, when you look at a lineup in baseball and your top 4 hitters in baseball, your first hitter, you need him to get on base. You want to get them on base, and so somebody that that you give it and they're going to run with it. And Reggie's proven that way. But then you also need a cleanup batter at 4th, that if anybody's on the base, that they're going to be able to drive it home. And so as I'm listening to that session, the closing session of the church planning training, I'm listening to Mike Santiago share, and he's talking about the mantle that's been passed down to leaders. And he's talking about that. And I'm thinking, well, that's what I really want men to hear, that there's a holy calling on their life. I want men to realize that, it's not just sitting in a pew, but how do we get activated? How do we activate men? So I'm really believing that last session is going to do something in the lives of men, that you're going to have men that are going to be challenged to step into a calling in their life. Because to be honest with you, we need more men that are going to become 360 leaders and that are going to step up. I know Royal Rangers needs men that are going to lead and disciple young men, that are going to help boys to become men. And so I'm going to believe that there's going to be men that are sitting there and go, you know what, I'm going to help mentor the next generation. I believe that there's men that are going to be sitting there that's going to say, you know what, I believe that God's calling me maybe to become a pastor. When I look at PennDel, and I know Potomac's the same way, we've got some churches that really can use a good pastor, somebody that's going to come in, that's going to love them, lead them, help that community to reflect Christ. And when I think through the opportunity, I think of men that have sat in pews and God tapped them on the shoulder and called them and saying, you know what you're doing is good, but let me take you to something that's great. I think of a guy, Steve Trader, and Steve's one of my favorite guys. Steve was a part of Wilmington First Assembly of God, and he had actually he's one of those guys, he was a board member, Sunday school superintendent, small group leader. He was an all-around quality guy, a part of that church. And one day God tapped him on the shoulder and said, Steve, I want you to plant a church. And Steve planted a church in Hocassin, Delaware. It's a great church. And then God tapped him again and say, Steve, I want you to go work for Global Teen Challenge. And so now he's working with teen challenges all around the world. But I think about Steve was working for AstraZeneca Pharmaceutical, and God tapped him on the shoulder and said, Steve, I've called you to do something else. And I believe that session is going to call men to step up and to step into a calling in their lives. So that's what we're believing God for.
Yeah, I know at Mantour Ministries next year, our theme is ride or die. And this session is going to kind of be a ride or die session for guys where they're going to be challenged. You're going to go all in for God. You're going to ride or die with God wherever he calls you to go, wherever he calls you to do. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's a little shameless plug there for Mantour Ministries too. That's our next year's theme. It goes so well with the Be Audacious theme too. Yeah, we didn't plan that when we each picked our themes, and they both go along together so well. So I'm looking forward to that session. And guys, one thing I want to talk about with Tom here as we're getting ready to wrap up in a few minutes, but one thing I want to discuss is So many people think this conference is for men in their 40s and their 50s, 60s, 70s. But guys, this conference is for all men. I really believe that men 30 and under need to make sure they attend this conference. So why should men in their teens and their 20s and their 30s, why should they come to this conference?
Yeah, we believe in that. And let me just tell you with that, we've got a student rate that we've made available so that, dads can bring their kids along. You can bring your college students along. If you're in PennDel School of Ministry, again, it's a rate for you guys. It's a student rate. And so we hope that this will give opportunity to make it more affordable for families. I think of some dads that I've seen that have brought their kids along, and I've seen dads with their teenage sons that have sat in the sessions, and it's been a powerful thing for them. You know, I remember when I became a Christian as a teenager that somebody came up to me once and said, "Don't worry, you're going to backslide, and then you'll come back to Jesus and love Jesus like all the rest of us."
What?
And yeah, it was pretty bizarre. And I'm thinking, what in the world is that? No. See, I don't believe that a person has to fall away from the faith to come back to Christ and really love
Yeah.
Christ. I believe that there's God's saving power and God's keeping power, and that if we can help guys to avoid some of the pain that we've seen guys that have made train wrecks. So the most powerful testimony in a church is not the guy that stands up and says, I was a drug addict for 30 years and God delivered me. That's a powerful testimony. But I believe the most powerful testimony is somebody that says, you know what? I gave my life to Jesus at an early age. I've served Jesus all my life. But when I think about it, I'm thinking about how many times have I seen people mess up along the way. And so for you and I, if we can help young guys to set that up. Now, in terms of young adults, I believe that young adults are facing such enormous pressure. It's coming at them from all directions. The opportunities to sin, the opportunities to turn away from God, the opportunities for things that are bombarding the faith. And so we want to provide a safe place where guys can come and that they can be challenged to serve God and give God their all. So we've created a space for that. Let me just tell you, this is not going to be this isn't a political rally, because I think that the church can be very, very divisive politically. We provided a place where our main message is Jesus Christ. It's about Jesus, and that's what you're going to get at this conference. It's going to draw people to Christ. And so if you've got a young adult, if you are a young adult, love for you to come and be a part of this. The speakers, in terms of the people that we've got, are people that are going to connect. Mike Santiago is one of the youngest leaders to speak at a general council. And so, he's on that slate. And so when I think about that, we want to provide opportunities. By the way, the music is going to be incredible. So we've got Brian Biondo's leading with a very, very talented worship team, and it's going to be powerful. I was just with Brian this week, just planning the worship pieces and walking through it. So it's going to be powerful.
And I want to pick up on one thing you did say there, because it's so true, is this is not a Republican conference. This is not a Democrat conference. I know Tom works hard to make sure there is no political stuff going on in his conference. He does not want it to go that direction. It's a time for men to come and learn about God. And that's something you've taught me too over the years. As January June conferences, keep all politics out of it. Because I can tend to be a political person. And I make an effort myself to follow your example and keep it out of the conferences. So
sometimes you do good with that. Sometimes you don't do as good on Facebook. I see.
Yeah, Facebook, I struggle sometimes, but at the conferences, I make sure to tell people no politics at the conference. And I know Tom focuses hard on that. So it's a friendly environment, no matter what your political affiliation is. And it's a shame you have to say that in today's world, but everything has become so divided politically that I think it's a good thing to point that out, that it doesn't matter what your political views are. This is a time for God's men to come together united and to grow in their walk with God. So I think it's a great point to bring out there.
Yeah, and let me just tell you, I mean, I've had some speakers down the line that have slipped a few things in. And so we've had Barry Black, the chaplain of the Senate, speak, and Barry did a great job, but Barry slipped something in, but then it was evened out because we had John Bevere last year, and John Bevere slipped something in. And I'm just like, okay, guys, we need to keep it about Jesus and walk through that. So I work really hard to make it about Jesus, because here's the thing. I want to win. The message of Christ transcends politics.
Yep.
So I believe that Jesus is above nationalism. And so when you look through that, the Christian flag and in terms of what we're believing, what we're moving to, Billy Graham was really good with that, because they kept trying to trap Billy Graham into, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And Billy Graham just kept the focus on, it's about Jesus. I've got to keep it about Jesus, because what happens is that if it becomes an issue and I get guys every year that try to get me to push an issue, and they're all good issues. Let me just tell you, I mean, there's so many different things that we can deal with and we can walk through. But in the end, I don't want a guy sitting there and not listening to the altar call because he got ticked off 20 minutes before when somebody made a political statement.
Exactly.
I want to win Democrats. I want to win Republicans. I want to win moderates. I want to win libertarians. I want to win all of them to Jesus. And if I am viewed as political, then it moves me off track. My message is not heard. And so I want to make sure that the key message is the message of Christ.
Amen. 100% agree with that.
Now, let me just tell you, with that, and I open up the door on social media, and with that there are many times that I'm watching the news and I get ticked at something, and I get so ready to fire off a text, to post something on Facebook, to be able to just kind of, and I'm like, I could just, man, I can refute that, or I can make a statement on that. And I've got to be so careful with that. Now, there are a few people that I have that are in my life that I can vent with, but it's really, I've got to be very, very careful with that. So I've got some guys I meet with on Thursday. I talk about being a part of a small group. I am in a small group. Thursday morning, I've done breakfast with some guys for over 15 years. Let me just tell you, we haven't always agreed. Just mention the word vaccine and you have all different statements. Everybody needs a place where they can vent and process with. It's a safe place. And let me just encourage leaders today, be very, very careful what you post and what you do, because with everybody who's cheering you on loudly, there are other people that are in the background that are grimacing and they're just saying, wow, if that's how he believes, then I'm wondering if I can believe the rest of what he says. And so be careful with that. That's my caution. So
yeah,
thanks.
I agree. One of the things I'm really struggling with right now in my own just prayer time is, God, why are churches letting vaccines and masks divide them? That's a topic for a whole other podcast, which is something like, God, I've been praying about. Help us get our focus back on the gospel and reaching the lost. And anyways, so back to the conference though. I know this year with COVID, it's a little bit difficult. It's not as bad as it was last year, but if somebody doesn't feel comfortable actually attending in person, what options do you have for somebody in that situation? I mean, obviously, like I said before, I really hope men turn out. I'd love to see men there in person, but there are some people who just don't feel comfortable. What do you have for them?
So one of the things that we like to practice is what we call group social distancing. So if guys are driving up together in a church van, driving up in cars, they're already exposed, in terms of, they've already exposed themselves to one another's, germs or whatever the case may be. So, so when they come in, they sit together and that's good. What we don't want to encourage is a ton of cross-pollination. So in other words, we don't want to jam guys in. So when I walked through the building at Trinity Life this past week, it's a big building. So let me just tell you, you get there, you don't feel real comfortable. There's plenty of space to spread out. A huge balcony, mezzanine level. And so being able to spread out a little bit, there's plenty of space for that. Bring a coat, and if you want to put a coat next to you and stuff to save a seat, you can do that. So that's the one option, is that there is a lot of space in the building, so we're not jamming people in. Yeah. I had a person once, say to me, "Why do we always do these things at big churches? Why can't we do it at a small church?" Because small churches we don't fit in.
Yeah.
So not to say that we love the small church. We love the intimacy that you get in that. But in terms of, we also want space. Men need their space. I'll go into a room and I'll watch people that set up chairs for a men's event, and they put them real close and tight together. I'll get in there early and I'll spread the chairs out a little bit. Why? Because I don't want to be rubbing shoulders with the next guy. You know what I'm saying? So I want my man space. And so we like to provide that. So we believe the Trinity has enough man space.
Yeah.
So if you're going to attend, there's some seating areas that allow you to spread out, and that won't be an issue. But there is a second option. One of the other options is what would happen if a church would say, we want to host the site. So we had 15 churches first year we did it. We had 15 churches last year that said, we want to do a host site. So if you look at a men's conference, to be able to be there, if you're registering at the door, it's $75. So for the cost of, so let's do the math right here. For the cost of 8 guys, a church can say, we're going to be our own host site. So instead of going down, taking the extra time, doing the hotels, and we're going to be a host site. So what that means is a church will pay a flat fee of $600. They pay a flat fee of $600. They can take an offering with their guys. Some churches said, we had a great year this year. Finances have been amazing because people have given and everything else. Church can just say, hey, we're paying the $600 and guys, come be a part of this. But however you're going to do it, however your church's situation is. I had one church up in Erie last year, Joe Kajawa. Joe said, Tom, we're a small church. We're not sure we can. I mean, the 600 is a lot of money, but at the same time, to drive all the way down from Erie, you're giving us another option. So what did Joe do? Joe contacted other churches in his area and said, let's all get together and let's partner together. And they had guys come in from different churches and walk through that. We had a church in West Virginia last year. They had 45 guys at their site. And when I think about what they did, they were sending us pictures of their lunch. Now, ChickfilA lunch with the choc chip cookie and the waffle fries, they're all, potato chips, they're all good. But let me just tell you, he was sending us the fire companies that do those outdoor chicken roasters. He had these chickens roasted and grilling. I'm telling you, it looked amazing. And so they had 45 guys out there. They had live worship. And that's another option for you too. You can even set up some live worship if you got a worship team. I talked to one guy up in the Allentown, Bethlehem area who he's used to doing a men's conference every year. I've spoken at his event. And he said, Tom, what I'd like to do, I'd like to do the live worship there at our venue, and then we'll switch to when the speakers come on. So I gave him the times in terms of how long to plan for worship for his teams. And, but there's different options with that. I'm telling you, you could create a great event in your local church. Now, I believe with you, Jamie, there's something about being in the house and working with that. But I also understand that with sometimes the travel, sometimes the commitments. This is the same weekend this year that the youth are doing youth convention at Kalahari. And that's going to create an issue for some churches. They're going to have to deal with, well, we only have one church van. Do the men get it or do the youth get it? Well, this gives an option for a church to say, hey, the youth can take their kids to Kalahari. We're going to just live stream it here in-house. And so to get the live stream, put it up on the screens and to be a part of that and create an atmosphere there. So those are some options. And by the way, with the youth, Lee Rogers, the youth director, and I spoke. It was the only weekend that they had available for a youth convention because that got pushed back again because of COVID. So we're all working together. We're on the same team. Yep. And so, I think sometimes churches, everybody's pivoting for resources. They're silos. We're working together. And I believe healthy young people are going to bring healthy men, and we want to see lives changed. And so across the board. And so this just gives another option for churches to be able to say, we can go that route. But here's the thing that I don't want churches to do. I don't want them just blowing it off and say, well, you know what, we just won't do it this year. There's no reason to not do it. Let's do it. Let's engage, because I think men need it.
Yeah, I think so too. It's been a hard, year and a half now. I think it's good for men to, I guess I would go in person, but the satellite option is a great option too. I know my home church is doing the satellite option. I'm going myself. So either option's great, guys. There's no reason not to attend this year's conference. And I know that you're going to be encouraged. It's going to be a great event for your men to be challenged. Pastors, if you're listening, I encourage you, make sure to promote this to the men, make sure they know about it. Go with them. Just you going with the men gets more of a buy-in from your men if you're with them. I encourage guys, take advantage of this conference. They put a lot of hard work into it, and I'm believing for it to be one of the best years we've had yet. So, Tom, I'm going to give you, as we get ready to wrap up here, give us your final best pitch why men should go to the 360 conference.
Yeah. So Jamie, I thank you again for this opportunity. You do such a great job. And Jamie, thank you also because, our men's Facebook page, you put the clips there, in terms of the different things that you do to help promote this is just a real blessing to us. Thank you for all that you do. By the way, guys, you can go to 360man.org and there's a promo video there that you can use to promote it within your church. In addition to that, there's the graphics for the screen. I was watching my church, GT Church in Reading. I was watching them, and the pre-service loop, I saw the graphic come up, and I'm like, wow, cool, there we are. And so, but it's all on 360man.org. And as well as the host site guidelines. And so it's all the information, all the bios, whatever you might need to promote it. If you need something else that's not there, let us know. Jamie and I will work together to get what you need to be able to help promote it within your church. Why go? Why go? One of the highlights is I do a survey every year. So sometimes people see that we do giveaways. It's like, hey, giveaway and everything. We do drawings and guys fill out cards and stuff. I get those cards because I want to email guys and I want to survey them and find out what God did in their lives. And it's interesting because every year I read those surveys and I just see guys just saying, for instance, Barry Black talked about being 10 times better. And guys are like, I'm committed to be 10 times better. John Bevere talked about multiplication and, that whole area of how do we become multipliers? How do we invest in the things of God and walk through that? I see guys talking to me about, in the surface, what God did. Because I asked the question, God do anything in your life? And I'll read 100 different guys that'll say, this is what God did in my life. I'll read men's leaders that'll say, it was amazing to hear the stories when we're driving back with our guys of what God spoke to them about this weekend. And that's why we do that, because I believe that we were created for more. And when we serve God, he moves us in an area of 360 man influence and the opportunity to be affected in a godly way. So thank you, Jamie, for all that you do to promote this. I love what you do with Mantour. I believe it's a great partnership. It goes together this way, and we're blessed. We've got guys like Jamie doing Mantour. We got Greg Ness doing Adventure Men. We got Dwayne Goodling which champions Life for the Lost and missions trips and Think Missions. And so we've got some great people within our district, within this family. And I'm so blessed, even if they are a Denver Broncos fan, we are blessed to be working on the same team in men's ministries.
Yeah, I love working with all you guys. And one thing Tom did mention there, guys, go to Facebook and type in the search PennDel Men's Ministry and follow that page. It has advertisements for the conference. It has short clips of all the speakers. We try and do Bible verses on there to encourage men. There's always something on that page. I think we do a couple times a week. We put something up there. So follow that page. Also go to 360man.org. Did I get that right?
Yep, you did.
360man.org. It has all the information on the conference. It has speaker bios. It has posters you can print out. Guys, print out posters, hang them in your men's room at your church. Guys are guaranteed to see it there. Hang them in your lobby on the doors. Make sure you play the video in your service. Do whatever you got to do to make sure your men know about this conference. It is, like I said before, my favorite weekend of the year. I'm looking forward to it. It's coming up. Can't believe how soon it is. When this airs, it already would be less than a month away. Time flies so fast, but it's going to be a great event. So I encourage you, men, make sure you and all your friends, contact your father, your uncle, your brothers, your neighbors, the guys at your church. It's an event for all men. If you know unsaved men or men who are seeking, bring them. They could find the hope they need at this conference. So I just encourage you, take advantage of this and make sure that you are there.
Yeah, one last thought with that is that one of the things that I believe in men's ministry is we create, capture, and sustain momentum. So how do we create momentum? So let me encourage you right now to create momentum. Do something that creates momentum. So when I think through that, sometimes, doing a football night, I know the Steelers played just this past weekend, and it was just with that, those of you that are Steeler fans, I'm not, but I'm on the other side of the state. But that it was a later game, and I'm thinking, wow, that's perfect for doing a wing night or something like that. And so when I think about that, doing something that gets guys together and work through that. And then what you do is after you've created that, you invite guys and say, hey, let's go to this conference. Let's do this together. Let's go to this Mantour event. And then when you come back from that, this is the critical part. When you come back from the men's conference, encourage guys to do a Bible study with you.
Yep.
So, when you go around the tables, you're going to see Jamie's book. You're going to see some of the speakers have different books, and they'll have some things that are great for Bible studies with men. And just say, you know what, guys, why don't we do this? We're going to do this. Jamie's new book next year, Ride or Die. We're going to do this together, guys. Let's do this. And so being able to work with that. Jamie, your book this year is, shameless plug,
Ride or Die.
Okay, will you have it at the men's conference?
Yes, the proof is coming tomorrow. We should have it there.
Great. Whoa.
And we will have the new one-year Bible plan finished and in printed format at the conference as well. I have to finish laying that out today when I'm done this podcast. So
that's awesome. So what we're saying, guys, is that use the opportunity of after this conference, say, hey guys, we're going to do this for the next 6 weeks. Who's going to jump on board? Who's going to do the Bible plan for this next year? Let's commit to this together and capture the momentum. Capture that momentum. Don't let it just go to waste, and to be able to work with that. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Jamie. You're the best. And hope you have an amazing, amazing day. And we'll see you at the men's conference, and either by host site or there in the building in Baltimore. But love you guys. Have an awesome day. Thanks, Jamie.
And thanks so much, Tom, for taking time to do this. I know you have a busy schedule, and we're happy to have you on and help you promote this conference, because we want to see it just packed with men praising and worshiping God and becoming audacious men, 360 men. It's going to be a great conference.
The Mantour Guy's final thought.
Guys, for my final thoughts, I just want to encourage you, like Tom said, go to this year's conference. This conference is always one of my favorite times of the year. I get to go to a men's conference, not to do anything, number one, that's great. But it's also great to be able to go and see a room full of hundreds and hundreds of men praising and worshiping God, and to see men responding at the altar to the call and the challenge they received that day. It is an amazing event. I encourage you, do whatever you have to do to get to this conference, and make sure you bring the younger men in your church with you. They need to be there as well. And guys, also, if you feel like if the whole COVID thing just scares you off, you can be one of the remote sites for this event. You can host it at your church. And for information on this and the registration and all the speakers, go to 360man.org. That's 360man.org. I encourage you guys, be at the 360 Man Conference. Do not miss out on this amazing opportunity. Guys, that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you so much for giving us your time to listen this week. Thank you to Tom for sharing with us. Guys, make sure that you go to wherever you get your podcast, subscribe, leave a rating and a 5-star review. That helps more men be able to find the podcast. Also, make sure you visit mantourministries.com. You can learn more about our books, our resources. You can read the first chapter of most of our books, including our newest book, Ride or Die, which is going to be released soon. You can get a jump and read the first chapter for free at Ministries.com. You can read our newsletter. We have so many amazing resources available for you. Make sure to visit Ministries.com, and also make sure to go to the 360 Man Conference, guys. You do not want to miss it. Well, that's all the time we have this week. We'll see you next week on the Mantour Guy Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Mantour Guy Podcast. Be sure to visit MantourMinistries.com to learn more about our books, men's ministry resources, and our Mantour conferences.
Hey guys, Jamie Holden here. Did you know that only 10% of churches have a healthy, thriving men's ministry? That's only 1 out of 10 churches. Well, my mission is to see this number become 100%. Join me in my work with HEUS Missions to help develop men's ministry in the local church. Become a monthly financial investor in the work God called me to do by going to mentorministries.com/partner and clicking on the Give Online button. Together, we can see God continue to move among men. Hey guys, Mantour Guy Jamie Holden here. Are you looking for a speaker at your church or for your men's breakfast, your next men's event, men's retreat, or men's conference? Well, why not bring me in to speak? God has been moving among men as I've been sharing an encouraging word of freedom and victory. We're seeing lives change, men being saved, people being set free, and guys, chains are being broken. So if your church has hurting men and women, contact me to come share this encouraging word of hope and victory to help you grow in your walk with God.
The Mantour Guy Podcast, helping men grow in their walk with God.